So just take a moment and breathe in and out together, realizing our oneness, getting center in a moment of sacred prayer, closing our eyes to the outer, we go within to that inner sanctuary of the heart, and we open to the presence of Spirit. We align with the divine, which is our true nature. Breathing in and out, we settle deeply, deeply into this moment, fully present, fully awake, alive, alert, and enthusiastic, filled with Spirit. The Christ candle has been lit, and if it's not lit physically, then it's lit in our hearts. The Christ candle shines for us, that Christ light. And so we now draw our attention to the energy of the prayer box at the front of the room, whether with our eyes open or closed, and we add our unique prayer request, that which may be on our heart, to this prayerful energy, to this prayer circle that we've created. And so whether you'd like to say your prayer request out loud or silently in your heart, let's take a moment to launch our prayers now. We believe in the power of prayer. We give thanks for answered prayer, and we are so grateful for this opportunity to join together as a spiritual community. And we say thank you, Spirit. And so it is. Amen. Our affirmation that supports our message for today is, I am one in spirit. I am one with all life. I'll say that again, and then we can say it together. I am one in spirit. I am one with all life. Together. I am one in spirit. I am one with all life. That is the loudest you have been all morning through the Mass. Wow, we must really mean that. Yes, I think so. And so now we're going to move into our time of meditation before our lesson this morning. So we just bring this prayerful energy, go deeper into the quiet, dropping our awareness fully into our heart space. Being aligned with the divine more fully. I invite you to pay attention to any tension that you may be holding in your jaw, in your shoulders, in your neck, your back, your legs. Just let go. You may even hear the refrain, I now let go. Just let go. And together we breathe in and out, gently and peacefully, rhythmically. We breathe in the breath of life. We breathe in the energy and the qualities of Spirit. And truly in moments such as this, we allow Spirit to breathe us. Ponder that for a moment. Spirit is breathing life into me. And I breathe life into the world. And so as we tune into the one presence and one power which gives us life, we are so very grateful. Tune into the qualities of Spirit, qualities of love, harmony, joy, and abundance, and well-being. We tune in wisdom and a sense of gratitude. And we remember that whatever God is, we are. Whatever God is, we are. We take that into the personal. Whatever God is, I am. Whatever God is, I am. Divine energy is the essence of my very being. Take these words in. Spirit lives through me. And Spirit delights in all the ways that I express my aliveness here on the planet. and so grateful for the presence of Spirit within. And so now we take a moment to rest in this divine energy. We rest in God's love. In the silence, we rest. And in this quiet time, we are reminded that we are one. We are connected as a spiritual community, connected with one another and the individual expressions of God that we are, connected with the earth and the animals, and connected with all humanity, with all life. And let ourselves feel that connection. There is no separation. There's no place where I end and you begin. We are one. Our joys, our celebrations, our concerns belong collectively to humanity. We release those to God now. And we bring our time of meditation to a close with gratitude in our hearts. And so it is. Amen. All right. Well, if you're not back from meditation, I just urge you back. Meditation is one of my favorite things to do. And as extroverted as I am, I think people are surprised that it's going within that I love so much. I ought to be on Facebook doing it more, and if I start to do it on Facebook, I will make sure I invite you. I actually would think that I would be really totally restless and going nuts, having been mostly in my house for the past 3 months, I think. March, April, May, June, yeah, 3 months. And yet, I have seen this time as what I refer to as the great calm, or a time of reset. It's a time of tuning in and seeing what's truly important. So this is my first in-person talk since the stay-at-home order. I've done a few from my dining room. I'm getting an applause. Yay. I've only been going to Target and to Whole Foods, or to Sprouts, and to work a few times a week. And so it's kind of neat to get on the road and drive again. I remember the first few weeks where I wasn't driving much at all, and I'd get in my car to go somewhere. I'm gonna try to make this not in my face too much. I got in my car to drive, and I had to remember, okay, push this button, put your foot here, remember how to drive. So I've actually been doing the hybrid thing, working from home and from work, and since I live alone, that kind of probably balances out the whole need to at least go somewhere. I've been walking more and talking to the bunnies and the chipmunks and even a little frog on my path. I started running in the morning now. I got bored with walking, so I thought I'm just going to pick this up a little bit. So that's kind of funny. And after the service, you'll have to tell me what is new in your life. You know, what have you been doing differently? I enjoy working from home from the dining room because my sliding glass door is open. And so it's as if the outdoors is coming in and I can feel the wind and hear the birds. And so it's just a little bit different. One of the things I've heard is that there is 17% less pollution. And I don't know if that's like in the whole world collectively. I've seen images of Venice and the canals. And I used to live in Italy, so whenever I see something about Italy, I kind of like to check that out. So the canals are more clear. And of course I can't hear any planes, and that train, that always did annoy me. Because I live in downtown Lee Summit, which Lee Summit was really built around being a major train stop. So life is different. And Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual teacher, talks about how it is beneficial. If I move over here, am I still in the camera?
You're right.
Okay, good. So Eckhart Tolle talks about we are more in tune with that deeper dimension of who we are. The kingdom of heaven is in our midst. We are more in touch with that kingdom when we are not so much in the thinking mind. Now in Unity, we use our thoughts to align with the divine. We go into our mind as a portal into the divine mind. But Unity is founded on the idea of sitting in the silence. Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity Movement, really kicked it off with a practice of sitting in the silence a few hours a day for a couple of years after she heard the affirmation, I'm a child of God and therefore I do not inherit sickness. And so she sat in the silence, speaking to the cells of her body, asking for forgiveness for the thoughts that she held about her body. I don't know if you're like me, that you probably have a few negative thoughts about your body. And I believe that the way that she was able to turn that into really a spiritual experience or a transcendent experience is that when she was in the silence, her mind wasn't thinking of her to-do list. It wasn't thinking of all that she should have done, would have done, could have done, ought to be doing. She was totally present. And when we are totally present, we open up to a deeper dimension of ourselves and a deeper dimension of reality. So we pattern our spiritual practice. In Unity, we sit in the silence every week. And there are other spiritual practices, such as taking a walk on a labyrinth or prayer. There's a spiritual practice of reviewing your day or moving through forgiveness. Singing is definitely a spiritual practice. And I bet for everyone here, there's a unique spiritual practice. Gardening, cooking, being in a relationship. What a practice that is. Being in a long-term relationship is definitely a spiritual practice. I hear the chuckles. I hear those chuckles. So, I'm going to put my glasses on just to make sure I'm clear here. There we go. So, there's a lot going on the planet at this time. You can't miss it because we get on Facebook and we see statistics, we see the images, we hear the stories, and there's even more going on than the pandemic. And in fact, if we weren't in this great calm, and it's not calm for everyone, I don't want to say that my experience is your experience. Some people are working part-time, some people may have lost their jobs or maybe on furlough. Some people are able to work in their offices. Some people are really challenged and super busy right now. But it still feels a little calmer. I hear less traffic driving by. There's less coming and going in the place where I live. And that opens us up to that dimension as well. So it's a little bit more silent. Eckhart Tolle speaks about going out in nature to get in touch with that deeper dimension. And the reason he suggests we go out in nature is that the trees and the plants aren't thinking. So there's actually something about being in, if you are in a school setting where the intention is to learn, and you're in a classroom, there's a lot of people studying books or analyzing problems. I do troubleshooting a good part of my day. I'm working on analysis. So I'm definitely in the thinking mind. So to have the window open, to have a little bit of nature coming in, or me spending more time outside, an hour a day, I'll have you know, it's as if I'm giving my mind a break. And when we do that, sometimes feelings come up that are uncomfortable, an old hurt or a resentment. And maybe we allow ourselves to feel it, even if it's a so-called negative feeling, and then it's able to dissipate. Some people share that they have gotten a new business idea, or they've decided, you know what, I like working a few hours less, or I like working at home. I'm going to request or even demand that I'm able to continue this. In other words, new decisions, new awareness, new understanding, a new thought is coming out of this time. A new thought is coming out of this time. So nod your head if something new has arisen for you around this. You know, some people may have decided to retire early or to change careers. Like, you know what, this just isn't working for me. I didn't think I could work at home. I dream of having a business where I'm doing my work, where I'm traveling and also doing my coaching and consulting. But I thought, I just can't break away from my Unity people. Well, I do. I could not even would shelve that idea over and over again. And then the stay-at-home order came, and our interim CEO is very productive. We were out a week in advance. We were at home, everything set up. Of course, I had to help get it all set up because that's what I do with the computer. So I was super busy for 2 or 3 weeks getting everything in alignment, and then we're all working at home, and it's working. And I survived that. And so now I'm like, ooh, and she actually asks us, what are the things that you would like to continue? And there may be some things you don't want to continue from this time, but what gifts did it bring? What do you want to bring into the new normal? Because it's not like we're going to go back. Who wants to go back? Spirit, there's a plan of unfoldment happening right here, right now, through every situation. And so I'm asking myself, what would I like? So right now I'm going to continue the hybrid, working at home and going into the office as well. So another thing that arose during this time, all over the world, not just in the United States, is the call, the uprising, the revolution, the demand for racial equality, and the videos. And we probably all have our heart broken, or wide open, or a few tears, or anger, whatever comes up over this type of thing over the past several years, or even as a child, whatever you may have experienced around this topic. But on some level, it's as if there is a stage for it to be presented. Now, whether you agree with this or see it that way, maybe a little bit this way or a little bit that way, that's okay. We all have our own perspective about everything, about wearing masks, about not going out, or about how we see this issue or that. And that doesn't matter. The details don't matter. The song that we were singing, walking hand in hand, we walk hand in hand with our brothers and sisters around the world. Do I need to do something different? Closer? Ooh, okay. All right. So we walk hand in hand with a brother and sister, just as you would if there was somebody here who said they had a need. We may not understand their need. We may not understand where that came from, how it unfolded, but we listen to one another and find out, how can I serve? How can with my unique gifts, my talents, my life experience, my spiritual understanding, and we can even set some of that aside and find out about our brother and sister, what they believe and what their needs are. So there's a lot going on, and we have an opportunity to serve, because we in Unity actually have a beautiful teaching which I would consider to be a liberation theology. Liberation theology is the term that is often used to the work of Martin Luther King, liberating the people in a circumstance. But a liberation theology is also us using our affirmations and denials. Liberation theology is liberating ourselves from any bias, any negativity, any judgment that we may be holding towards ourselves or another person. And as we are free, we model that for others and are able to be present with what is unfolding. So Kevin Ross, who used to be the minister at Unity Southeast in Kansas City, now he's in Sacramento, he made a big point in a sermon that he gave. He said, Unity is a new thought church. And he said it needs to be a new action church. A new thought church becoming a new action church. And so I kind of took that and put my own little spin on it. New thought, new action, new world. New thought, new action, new world. Let's say that together. New thought, new action, new world. So we'll be diving into that concept today. And yes, I have a really interesting talk title, and it is, no matter how you slice it or dice it, we are one. No matter how you slice it or dice it, no matter how you look at ourselves and our differences, and aren't there differences among us? It is our similarities that often bring us together. And it is our differences that can divide. And that's just a helpful thing to keep in mind. And if you've ever had a spat with your spouse or with your best friend, you can recall that the energy that brought you together were the things that you liked about each other. the things you enjoy, the interests that you share, your attraction, and the things that may separate you are those areas where you may be different. You may see something different or experience it different. You may have a different memory of something, or you may just want to go do different. I want to see this movie. Well, I want to see this movie. So we just to keep that in mind, that is, there are differences that can separate us. And yet, the truth of who we are is that we are one. But we're also walking the earth plane. Robert Grummet, who's an instructor in ministerial school and the author of several books, including Finding Yourself in Transition and Birthing a Greater Reality, Living Originally, and The Quest for Wholeness, he shares this idea of double vision. And double vision is being in the world and not of it. That double vision can also be doing what needs to be done in the earth plane and recognizing that we are spiritual beings, we are eternal beings, we are divine beings. And of course, in unity, we get to interpret that in our own unique way. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
I usually don't wait so late in the service to ask for an amen, so I may have to ask for a few more. So this idea of double vision is where I recognize the truth. I know who I am, and that health and wholeness and that abundance and joy and peace and love are my true nature. And I will also wear my seatbelt and try to drive the speed limit. And you know I like those big hills, and so sometimes I do stretch that a little bit. So it's interesting in the Daily Word message for today about will. We all have our own will, don't we? We sure do. So there's so much going on this time, and people may feel overwhelmed. They may not have gotten to see their family, or their work situation may have changed, a financial situation may have changed as well. But we can remember the truth of who we are. And I'm reminded of the story of Mary and Martha, actually, which is found in the Gospel of Luke. And the story goes like this. Jesus was visiting the home of Mary and Martha. And likely, it is said that Mary and Martha are the sisters of Lazarus. So in the living room, Mary sat at Jesus' feet, drinking in the wisdom and the love, while Martha was busy in the kitchen preparing lunch. And Martha was so caught up in the preparations that had to be made. Her mind was very mental. She may have not have been noticing everything she was doing. You've been there, shopping for Christmas or just trying to get things done. And she came up to Jesus and she was a little perturbed. And she said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. And he said, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset by many things, but only one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen what is better. It's also said Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken away from her. So what is that one thing? Centering in spiritual awareness, as Mary did in the story. Now we know in Unity that the characters in Scripture represent an aspect of our lives, an aspect of our personality, and it's not necessarily that we're just a Mary or just a Martha. In fact, we are both Mary and Martha. We are both. And so what Mary got was the idea of being connected. She was listening to Jesus, but symbolic of tuning into her Christ nature, tuning into the spiritual qualities and drinking them in, embodying them fully. And what Martha got was that there are things on the earth plane. Maybe that's what she would have said. There are things on the earth plane to do. And she felt a sense of peace or a sense of order around getting those accomplished. And when we see the beautiful merging of Mary and Martha, we can imagine and picture those times when we, from a centered place, from a sense of oneness, were able to fulfill our obligation or do what was ours to do our work from that place. I've done IT work and computer work for many years, and it can get pretty hairy because it is problem solving. A lot of things are right now. This is it's a kind of like a panic situation. The network is down. the email's not working, or this it needs to be set up. And many times, over and over again, I approach the work as if it's a problem, as if it's a pain in my side, and from a mental place, an overly mental place, where I wasn't really open to divine solutions, to divine ideas. I saw it as a hassle. And yet, when I approach it as an act of service, or when I approach it as if I was just meditating, and there comes the problem, and allow the solution to come just as easy, that is us living in the world, but not of it. We can also open up our mind to any challenge that may be going on in the world and approach it in that way, where we bring our being nature and our doing nature, our spiritual side and our human side. So we have a being nature, or be, I am, and then our doing nature, which is carrying out our work, our purpose in the world, and do so in what we would probably call an enlightened way. Have you ever seen someone doing their work and their eyes have maybe a twinkle or a gentle smile, or maybe the lines on their forehead are just smoothed out? Maybe they have a glow about them, or you feel their energy, because you can feel the presence, that deeper dimension expressing through them. The words of Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. And the kingdom of heaven is in your midst. The kingdom of heaven is among you. But for this talk, I'm going to focus on another interpretation, which is the kingdom of heaven is within you. All the gifts, all the joy, all the peace right here. And we can express that in our day-to-day activities, instead of separating ourselves, going up to the mountaintop. And we can go up to the mountaintop. We just have to remember to come back down. To take those steps, come down the mountaintop with the beautiful energy that we tap into in prayer and meditation. Bring it back down into the valley, into our town, into our community, into our relationships, and bring that light with us. So our fifth principle in unity is all about taking action. It's all about taking action. And I think the fifth principle is something like knowing the truth is not enough. And I'd like to say it a little bit more positive than that. Embodying the truth, being exposed to spiritual truths and embodying the truth will naturally lead to inspired action. And why take action if it's not inspired? Inspired means from God, from the higher realm, from a higher idea, where we can stop and ask ourselves, what is mine to do? Just like we sing every Sunday, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And so I ask myself, what is mine to do? And with who? What organization can I support? What project? What initiative? And so I can also ask myself, in this moment, what am I identified with? Am I identified with oneness, or am I identified with a sense of separation? And sometimes that takes some discernment to really tease out. You ever got a knot in your hair, or a knot in a ball of yarn, and you had to tease it out? Sometimes our mind kind of gets tangled, and to truly sit with it and ask, what is mine to do? And then when that arises, to ask, what impact will that make? So we can feel the why, feel the energy of it. Whether it's to teach a class here, or to bring some of these concepts out into the community, maybe just by showing up and volunteering with the animal rescue, or whatever calls to your heart. I want to share a little story with you I got from the internet. I actually got it from Lori's Facebook page. A man was hired to paint a rowboat a new color, and he brought his paint and brushes, and he began to paint a boat a bright red, just as the owner asked him. While painting, he noticed a small hole in the hull, and he quietly repaired it. When he finished his paint job, he received his payment, and he went on his way. The next day, the owner of the boat came to the painter and presented him with a nice fat check, much higher than the agreed upon amount for painting the rowboat. The painter was surprised and said, "You already paid me for painting your boat, sir." And the man replied, "This money is not for the paint job, it's for repairing the hole in my boat." "Ah," said the painter, "such a small service, such a small act, certainly not worth paying me such a high sum for something so insignificant." And the man said, "My dear friend, you do not understand. Let me tell you what happened. When I asked you to paint the boat, I forgot to mention the hole. And later, after the boat dried, my kids took it and went on a fishing trip. They did not know there was a hole because I wasn't home at the time. But when I returned and noticed they had taken the boat, I was desperate because I remembered that it had a hole. Imagine my relief and joy when I saw them returning safely from fishing. Then I examined the boat and found that you had repaired it. You see now what you did? You saved the life of my children. I do not have enough money to pay you for your small, good deed." So what is the message here? No matter who, what, when, where, or how, continue to help, sustain, fix, uplift, inspire, wipe tears, listen attentively, and repair all the leaks that you find. You never know when somebody may be in need for something that you can fix or support or inspire. And it'll be a pleasant surprise when we do step out to be corrective and kind and helpful to another. We don't need to do so with the expectation of anything in return, but we know how this universe works. We know that when the water rises, all boats rise. So there's so much going on in the world today that we can allow to open our hearts wider, open our minds, help us to ask what is mine to do, and so that we don't over slice and divide, slice and dice, and separate, but instead we walk together in a sense of oneness, So one of the things that I have been doing to educate myself is taking a class called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And growing up on a military base, I really didn't experience that much racism. It didn't seem there was a lot of couples that were married, interracial couples, and so I experienced a lot of that. But when I turned 14 years old, I was very close to a male black friend, and that didn't sit well with my parents. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I never so much thought my parents were right all along, but in that moment, I knew something was off. And he was the son of an army. My dad was Air Force. And so there was many ways to slice and dice that friendship that I was starting, and that was very painful for me. And then when I was in high school, I became involved with the student government in an appointed position. I wasn't elected, but I wanted to start a hospitality committee to welcome the new students, because I had moved around so much as a child that I knew what it felt like to be new, or to feel like I didn't belong or fit in. It takes a while to get to that point. And so I got to linger around the student government meetings and be a part of that. And it came time for homecoming. And we were trying to be progressive, and somebody came up with the idea, this was in 1985, came up with the idea of not just electing the females to the court, but to also elect the males. And the sponsor of that group said, "We can't do that." And we said, "Why can't we do that?" And they said, "Well, if you elect people," basically they were saying you can't control who will walk out on the field together. And so another way of, again, slicing and dicing this population and separating people, which was sad. And I'm so glad to see the progress that we've made over the past 30, 40, 50 years. Certainly have made a lot. And there's more to go. So there is this evolutionary impulse within each one of us. There is an evolutionary impulse You can see it when you look back in your own life and look at how far you've come, and you look at some of the policies and some of the ways of being out in the world and see how far we've come, and yet we're still on this journey. We are still on this journey, and we can allow that evolutionary impulse to have its way in our heart so that we continue to have a realization. I know, realize I'm one with the one. The song was so, Tina, you are just on it. So we allow these realizations to come in our heart, even if we thought we had an understanding last week. Maybe there's a new understanding this week of how we can see it, or what is ours to say, what is ours to do. And change can be chaotic and uncomfortable. We can just breathe through it, just breathe through the discomfort and take the next steps in our lives, lining up with our true nature. So the world mirrors the collective consciousness back to us. We're able to see through news, through hearing the sirens, through everything that's going on, we can see the projection of the consciousness that people are holding. And of course, we do our part. Life shows us what needs to be healed. So in closing, we are creating a roadmap for a new world. We're creating a new paradigm each and every week in Unity. We are clearing a pathway and making a space for good and for God to express more fully. And so we must nurture the inner space. And let's close out with a prayer. We nurture that inner space so that we can tune into what is ours to do. We allow for new awareness and new growth and blessings for all of humanity. And we listen. We are one in spirit. We are one with all life. Let's say it together. We are one in spirit. We are one with all life. And so